Hi, I'm Tristan Gory, and in this video I will teach you the essential database terms to begin your adventure in the database world. So, in this video, I will teach you what is a database exactly, what is a table, a view, an index, and a stored procedures. Those four terms are the basic terms of a database. You will need to know what they are to begin your adventure in the database world. So, what is a database? A database is an organized collection of structured information or data, typically stored electronically in a computer system. A database is usually controlled by a database management system, or DBMS, for a shortened name. Together, the data and the DBMS, along with the applications that are associated with them, are referred to as a database system, often shortened to just database. Data within the most common types of database in operation today is typically modeled in rows and columns in a series of tables to make processing and data querying efficient. The data can be then easily accessed, managed, modified, updated, controlled, and organized. Most databases use a structured query language (SQL) for writing and querying data. So, what is a table? A table consists of one or more tables. Each table is made up of rows and columns. If you think of a table as a grid, for example here, if you think of a table as a grid, the column go from left to the right across the grid, and each entry of data is listed down as a row. Each row in a relational is uniquely identified by a primary key. Uh, on this image, it's the person ID. This can be by one or more sets of column values. In most scenarios, it is a single column, such as employee ID or person ID for in this example. Every relational table has one primary key. Its purpose is to uniquely identify each row in the database, because if, for example here, Luke Skywalker and C3PO has the same person ID or the same primary key, it will cause a lot of trouble for the database management system. Not two rows can have the same primary key value, so the practical result of this is that you can select every single row by just knowing its primary key. That's why you don't need to know the name, the home planet, etc., etc., to know that Luke Skywalker has the ID 1. You just need to know the ID to get the rest. So, what is a row? A row in a table can contain 0 or more rows. When there are 0, it's said to be empty. There is not practical limit on the number of rows a table can hold. However, remember the table's primary key may have some influence on this. What it means is that your table holds states, and the primary key is the state's abbreviation. Then by definition, since there are only 50 states in the Union, and you cannot have duplicates in a primary key. Your table is limited to 50 rows. There is no guarantee that the rows in a table are stored in a particular order. Use the order by clause to do so. Also, strictly speaking, in a relational database, there is no first or last row. Yes, you can tease out a first row of a result using a keyword such as limit or tot, but those are used when the data is retrieved and sorted. The difference here is that you are seeing the first row of the result, not what is physically stored in the table. The rows are the line. For example, the first row is person ID 1, Luke Skywalker, etc. And there is column. Columns are defined to hold a specific type of data, such as person ID, name, home planet ID, etc., etc. In the simplest of definitions, a column is defined by its name and the data type. The name is used in SQL statements when selecting and ordering data, and the data type is used to validate information stored. So, a date of birth column defined as a date can be referred to in an order by clause as. And if you try to add a value of, for example, Hello Kitty to the column, as part of its validation, it will recognize it isn't a date and reject it. Column names can be duplicated in a table, so having two name columns is a no-no, because you can't have, for example, a duplicate name for Luke Skywalker, because it will create a lot of trouble too. Uh, so you could have two name columns, such as name 1 and name 2. You will learn later that this is frowned up as it breaks normal form, etc. Because it won't be really easy to integrate. So it's done for the table part. Let's see what is a view. A view in a database is a result set of a stored query on the data, which is the database users can query just as they would in a persistent database collection object. This pre-established query command is kept in the database dictionary, unlike ordinary base tables in a relational database. A view does not form part of the physical schema. As a result set, it is virtual table computed or collated dynamically from data in the database when access to that view is requested. Changes applied to the data in a relevant underlying table are reflected in the data shown in subsequent invocations of the views. In some NoSQL database, views are the only way to query data because you need something to get data, etc. If you have nothing to do so, databases are useless. Views can provide advantage over tables. So views can represent a subset of the data contained in a table. Consequently, a view can limit the degree of exposure of the underlying tables to the outer world. A given user may have permission to query the view while denied access to the rest of the base table. So, for example, here, me as a user, I can be allowed just to see the person ID and the name, and the view will help me to only retrieve those information. Views can join and simplify multiple tables into a single virtual table. Views can act as an aggregated tables where the database engine aggregates data and presents the calculated results as part of the data. View can also hide the complexity of data. For example, a view could appear as um, for example, sales 2000 or sales 2001, transparently partitioning the actual underlying table. Views take very little space to store. The database contains only the definition of a view, not a copy of all the data it presents, because it will take a lot of space in the database. Depending on the SQL engine used, views can provide extra security to not let everyone access all the data of the database and just let them access the data they need to see. Just as a function in programming can provide abstraction, so can a database view. In another parallel with functions, database users can manipulate nested views. Thus, one view can aggregate data from other views. Without the use of a view, the normalization of database above second normal form will become much more difficult. Views can make it easier to create lossless joint decomposition too. So what is an index? An index in a database allows a query to efficiently retrieve data from a database. Indexes are related to specific tables and consist of one or more keys. A table can have more than one index built from it, obviously. The keys are a fancy term for the values we want to look up in the index. The keys are based on the table's columns. By comparing keys to the index, it is possible to find one or more database records with the same value. Since an index drastically speeds up the data retrieval, it is essential to correct indexes are it is essential the correct indexes are defined for each table. And missing indexes won't be noticed for a small database, but rest assured, once your database grow in size, queries will take much longer. For example, indexes, you can think of books for example with indexes. to retrieve only the page you want to see or the chapter you want to see, and not going page by page. It will take a lot of time. And to finish this sequence, what is a stored procedure? Stored procedures is a prepared SQL code that you can save, so the code can be reused over and over again. So if you have an SQL query that you write over and over again, save it as a storage procedure, and then just call it to execute it. You can also pass parameters to a storage procedure so that the stored procedures can act based on the parameters values that is passed. That's why storage procedures are really useful, and most of people using a database use stored procedures to speed up the information querying. So thanks a lot for watching. Those are my sources. I used Wikipedia for the definition of a database, and essentialsql.com helped me for the definition of some terms, etc. And CBT Nuggets, I recommend you to go watch his database series. They are that is really great to know from the beginning to the end what is a database, how to create one, how to manage one, etc., etc. So thanks a lot for watching, and I wish you a lot of luck in the world of database. See ya.